Thank you. This meeting, as you have just been notified, is being recorded so that, and we will be posting it on the project website so that people who weren't able to attend the meeting this evening will be able to watch it. And this is an ongoing process, and there is opportunity for everyone to provide input as the process continues. Once again, my name is Sophia Fisher. I am a planner with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development in the Planning Division. I am managing the plan amendment that we'll be discussing tonight. Other Fairfax County staff with us this evening are Megan Van Dam. She's the branch chief for the Policy and Plan Development branch in the Planning Division, and we've got Brian Bertello from Zoning Evaluation Division, and Matt Renninger from Supervisor Lusk's office is here as well. We also have David Gill representing the applicant, and he is going to talk a little bit about what they hope to do with the site. Let me share my screen. And get the presentation started. All right, it is hard for me to know. Megan, does this look right?
Sophia, I'm seeing your the working screen, so it's not in full screen.
Thank you. This is the problem when we have multiple screens. My apologies. I thought there was a button that I could switch this.
So if you stop sharing and then you go back to share again, you'll have the options for your windows, and just click the window you want to use and then share. You have to do it before you actually begin sharing.
Oh, thank you. We are using multiple different platforms for these meetings, and so my apologies. Everyone is a little bit different. There, I think I'm sharing the correct screen now. All right.
Yes, we're seeing it in full screen. Sophia,
Perfect.
thank you, Matt.
Yep, thank you. So this is plan amendment. Our number for it is 2021 Roman numeral 4 S2. It's the Villa Park application. So a brief agenda for this evening is welcome and introductions, which we've just gone through. If I haven't said it already, thank you all very much for taking the time to be here this evening to share your input and your thoughts about this project. I'm going to move on to housekeeping and request that everyone remains on mute unless you're asked to speak. Sorry, going back to the agenda. So welcome, housekeeping. I'm going to walk through what a comprehensive plan is, because we know that that's not something that everyone is familiar with, but I'll keep it brief in case you do know what a comprehensive plan is all about. And then I'll speak specifically about the plan amendment that staff is working on right now. And then David Gill is going to briefly walk through what the applicant is proposing to develop on the site, and then we will have time for question and answer. I am going to ask that everyone hold their questions till the end, because it's possible that your question may be answered as we go through the presentation. So presentations. So there will be opportunity. This is an opportunity for input, but we'd like you to all have the background. So you can put comments and questions in the chat at any time. Megan is here and she will be monitoring. I probably won't be able to monitor the chat while I'm presenting, but we do have staff who are monitoring the chat and may be able to respond to questions on the fly. If you want to ask a question during the Q&A session, we ask that you raise your hand. You can do that. There's the reaction button down on the screen. It's a little smiley face with the plus. If you click on that, one of the options is a hand, and you can raise it, and that will let us know who has a question, so we can call on you, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. We also ask that you lower your hand. You have to do that. You have to click the button again to lower your hand after you've asked your question, so we can make sure that we get everyone's questions. The other thing I want to call your attention to is that in addition to recording this meeting, we are also using the live transcript feature. So if you would like to see the live transcript, and get closed captioning as we are speaking, you can click the CC live transcript button. If you don't have your Zoom window fully expanded, this live transcript button may not be visible. So you need to click on the 3 dots that say more, and then click on the transcript to access that feature. So to briefly talk about what a comprehensive plan is, it's a policy document that is used as a guide in decision-making about the built and natural environment. It contains recommendations, but it is not law. It's used in decision-making by the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and Board of Zoning Appeals, and others. Some of the topics that a comprehensive plan addresses include land use, transportation, environmental stewardship, provision of public facilities, park and recreation, housing, and other major topics. Fairfax's first comprehensive plan was adopted in the 1950s. Oh gosh. Why have a comprehensive plan? So the Code of Virginia actually requires every county in the Commonwealth to have a comprehensive plan to shape the orderly development of the county. It's intended to manage growth and preserve the environment. The intent is expressed in goals and objectives and policies in the policy plan. The comprehensive plan itself is very extensive. We actually have a volume for the policy plan and 4 volumes of area-wide guidance. This area that we're talking about tonight falls in area 4, and if you stack it up, it's a very large amount of paper. We do it mostly electronically these days. The county's ordinances and regulations implement policies and guidance, and it's reviewed by the locality's planning commission at least once every 5 years. In Fairfax County, this isn't a formal review of the entire plan all at once. We are continuously reviewing and updating various parts of the comprehensive plan. Some smaller jurisdictions might do a comprehensive 5-year review, but Fairfax, like I said, because we're so big and have so much guidance, we're always working on pieces of the plan. So how this relates to the regulatory side of development is that, as I said, the comprehensive plan is used as a guide in the decision-making process. It recommends elements that should be achieved by a development, such as open space, sidewalks, transportation recommendations, environmental features such as stream valley preservation and so forth. It informs the review of a zoning application if one is needed. And frequently, a lot of development in Fairfax County does go through a zoning process, which is part of the reason that we're here this evening. because, to come to my third bullet, any rezoning requires that the proposal is in conformance with the recommended uses and language within the comprehensive plan. If there are cases where the proposal does not meet the comprehensive plan or the plan has a different recommendation, there are ways to amend the comprehensive plan. We have 4 primary ways: area-wide planning studies, site-specific plan amendments, countywide and policy plan amendments, and then additional board authorized amendments. So very briefly, area-wide studies are things like the McLean study, West Falls Church, and Lorton, which are basically larger scale areas. Site-specific and board authorizations, these are smaller in scale. They're often concurrent with a rezoning. And then countywide or policy plan amendments include the recently adopted housing policy change regarding workforce dwelling units. So the type of plan amendment that we're working on this evening and that we're here to speak with you about is a board authorized plan amendment that is concurrent with a rezoning. So I'm going to transition now into speaking more specifically about the plan amendment and what we're looking at here. So this is a map that shows the area in question. The plan amendment was authorized by the Board of Supervisors on March 23rd, 2021. The site is about 5.81 acres and is about 94% covered in tree canopy. The current comprehensive plan is residential use at 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre. And what staff is studying is 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre, which is slightly less than what the board authorized, which was 8.5 dwelling units per acre. And I'll talk to that, speak about that a little bit later. We're looking at up to 42, 43 units total proposed. The original proposal was about 49 units, so it has been reduced a little bit. Currently, the property is zoned R1, which is a residential dwelling unit, residential district allowing 1 dwelling unit per acre. So that would be about 5 units. And we are co-processing this with a rezoning that would allow 42 to 43 townhouses. The rezoning itself, as David will probably talk about, is undergoing some revisions. So the numbers about the rezoning may change as this goes through the process, but this is where we're at currently. So to give a little bit of context, again, the area subject to the plan amendment is outlined in red. It's surrounded by other residential uses. To the north, we have residential use at 8 to 12 dwelling units per acre. This is a townhouse development. To the west, we've got 4 to 5 dwelling units and 1 to 2 dwelling units. These are single family residential units. And then to the south, it's planned for 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre, but it was developed at closer to 8 units per acre and is another townhouse community. This is just to give you an idea of what the site looks like today. If you live nearby, you probably are familiar with this, but it's a heavily wooded site currently. And again, this is the surrounding area. So you can see single family houses, townhouses, lots of mature trees, and so forth. Again, this is your community, so you're already quite familiar with this. So what we're looking at with the plan amendment is looking at the proposed increase in residential density, taking into consideration what the adopted comprehensive plan already recommends. So the plan recommends residential use at 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre, and we're considering a change up to 8 dwelling units per acre. One of the primary things that we consider when we're looking at a plan amendment for this type of development where we already have existing neighborhood is compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. So compatible development, you know, I pointed out the variety that exists today. You've got a mix of townhouses and single family houses. Townhouses, which would be the higher density, would be compatible with what's existing today. However, so we're looking at, you know, bringing in a similar type of development to what exists to the north and the south. Other key considerations that we're looking at include buffering the existing residences, so making sure there's adequate landscaping and screening between the existing residences and the proposed residences. Tree preservation, as I've noted, this site is heavily forested, and tree preservation is a significant consideration, particularly when it comes to the environmental benefits of trees. Usable open space, ensuring that there are recreational facilities, gathering places, dog walking areas for the residents of the new community. Stormwater management is always a large consideration with any development that we review. Roadway connections and access, so thinking about connections to Villa Park Road and also Wesley Road, and having more integrated transportations. And then impact to public facilities and infrastructure, including you know, the schools, parks, and all of those things. So this is the proposed rezoning layout as of July 29th. David might show you something a little bit different. I know they're working through some revised concepts. But this shows you several townhouses. I think this layout has 42. You've got stormwater management ponds in this area, screening around the perimeter, and then some areas of tree preservation and open space. To give you a sense of the timing, we're here at the community meeting. We had advertised and planned.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you for a second. Go back. Can we go back to the image that you had with the last screen? Because to me, that's most important in how it's going to impact my house. And we kind of really skipped over that pretty quickly.
Do you mean this one?
I'm only seeing your face. Oh, yes, this one. How is this impacting Villa Del Rey and Franklin Commons and everything? How is this impacting our neighborhood? That's what I'm interested in.
Okay. Well, this would bring new development into the neighborhood. We are working through the process that and including working specifically to include more green space and more tree preservation. That is one of the significant items of discussion that the county is having with the applicant. There would be some transportation impact. They're providing 4 parking spaces for each unit, plus additional visitor parking. So the goal is, hopefully people won't have more than 4 cars.
Have you guys done a traffic study and looked at the congestion and parking currently? Because I don't think anyone's.
Hey, Megan, it's Matt. I'm going to kind of interrupt real quick here and make sure that this is kind of how we want to proceed with the meeting. I think it might be better if your team finishes their presentation and then we hear from the applicant and then get into Q&A, but I'll defer to you, Megan. I just don't want us to get too far down this road.
Matt, I appreciate that comment. Sophia only has really maybe 1 or 2 more slides at most. So why don't we finish that and we'll get back to these, because these are all very good questions that I think we need to talk through. And that's why we're here tonight. So Sophia, why don't you go ahead and just finish up the last 2 questions and then we'll go back to them.
Yeah, so I actually only have 1 slide left, and this is it. We had initially planned to hold a Planning Commission public hearing on September 21st and Board of Supervisors public hearing on October 25th. We are now deferring those public hearings so that we can do more work with the applicant to get their proposal in better shape. And I'm going to note a little bit, sort of a general note before we get into question and answer, is that some of the more specific questions that people may raise are going to be better addressed by the rezoning. And we have the zoning staff coordinator, Brian, here, and he may be better suited to answer some of these questions, because I want to be clear that the comprehensive plan is a policy document. It's a guiding document, and some of the details, some of the really nitty gritty stuff isn't going to be covered or captured by the comprehensive plan. And that's why we have the zoning process to implement the comprehensive plan and to deal with some of these details that are really beyond the scope of a comprehensive plan. So we want to hear all questions and comments, but I don't want you to think that I'm not willing to answer your questions, because I am. I just want to make it clear that some of the questions aren't necessarily something that the comprehensive plan is going to address. But that's why I invited Brian, so he may step in and answer some questions as well.
Sophia, this is Megan, and I appreciate that nuance. I mean, I think it's there are layers to this process as we work through the policy and then the zoning with that, in the weeds look. I also just wanted to point out that, part of the purpose of this meeting tonight is to understand, your communities and to hear from you all about priorities within your community, concerns about the proposed development, concerns about impacts, that we can hear and that we can also take into our analysis. We're in the process. I put in the chat, there was a question about, why are we here if this is already approved? The comprehensive plan amendment is not already approved. And we're here tonight to get feedback on this potential change to the plan and to understand where your community is in terms of what is important, what is valued when it comes to land use changes and new development within your neighborhood. So, I'll just say that if we don't have the answer tonight, please be patient, because, we are looking into that. Chances are, especially there's just a question about the transportation analysis that's underway now, which we're working through. And it's good to hear that that's something that you all are concerned about, because we certainly do look at that. So if we don't have an answer tonight, when we come back towards, when we are closer to public hearings and closer to producing a staff report analysis, and we have more specific answers for you, hopefully those concerns are captured in that. So, again, this is a process. It is layered. We are in the middle of it, and we are working through that analysis. So, I understand that you do want questions answered tonight. But please be patient, because we are working through that. And, it's good to hear what is important to you all at this point, to make sure that when we do have that analysis to present to you, it can be comprehensive.
Okay, with all that said, thank you very much for that dialogue. My concern is I am an off-site owner, and I have gotten 0 information sent to me, except for God bless my tenants who is sending me the information about this whole development who's coming in, the traffic issues that are going to, you know, impact the entire community. That's my concern.
So as a resident
that-
who lives here, we didn't get much notice, and I noted
Well,
that to Sophia as we
and- well,
started.
and-
Can we please
and-
continue so we can get to the community feedback? That is the important part, and you'll have a chance to speak because I want to speak as well. But
Well,
I share your frustrations because I wasn't
again,
there.
well, if you could let me finish, I own a property there and I get zero information. So, and it's probably worse if you own a property and you live there. So why are we not getting this kind of information? Why are we not getting the impact studies, the traffic studies, how it's going to impact our community? Why are we not getting that information?
Okay,
From the county.
it's Matt.
Okay.
It's Matt from Supervisor Lusk's office again. I think if we get through the presentations here and you hear a little bit more about the process, you're going to learn about the opportunities when those studies happen and when the information goes out. So if we could just let staff complete their presentation.
And I appreciate that,
Yeah.
but I didn't even get the information that this meeting was happening,
Okay,
except
so,
from my. Let
ma'am,
me finish. No, let me finish. Except from my tenant.
Okay,
So
that's definitely something we can discuss during the Q&A period. If we could just let staff finish their presentations and we'll get into the Q&A, and the communication and outreach to the community is definitely something we can put on the board for discussion.
well, it needs to be better because it has been lacking because I've gotten zero.
Okay.
So
Let's get back-
finish
And
and
this-
then I'll
Yep.
talk.
And this is Megan. I'm sorry. You're represented as iPad 5 on this, so I'm not sure who is speaking. But if you could,
My name is Karen. It's
yep,
Karen
well, I was
Depp.
going to say
I
maybe
live in the
just-
community.
that's
I'm on vacation. That's why it came across like that.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, I was just going to say, if you could, we pull information from the tax records, and we're always trying to improve our notification process. Your tenant received an email or a letter because we are sending them to residents, not only owners. But if you could maybe direct chat me with your name, we can check to make sure, with your name and your property address, we can check to make sure you're on the list for the notifications so that further communication is available to you and we can get that resolved.
thank you, Megan.
Yep.
That's very helpful. I
Yeah,
will
so
do
just
that. Thank you.
direct message me if you don't want to do it to the whole group. Sophia, there are a couple questions in the chat about the notification process. So would you mind, please, just if you could talk a little bit about the process since you have the schedule up on the web.
I just stopped sharing,
Oh,
but
before, and then we can move over to David to get to his presentation, because I just want people to know about the notification process and what we're doing for that. And again,
Yeah.
I'd offer that to others. If they didn't get a notification about this meeting, please direct message me in the chat. I'm taking notes, and I can work with Sophia to make sure you're added to our notification list, and we can check against our maps to see where your properties are and why we don't have notifications being sent out to you. So please go ahead and do that.
Thanks, Megan. We actually did 2 mailings. The first was prior to the deferral of the Planning Commission public hearing. We sent out adjacent property owner notices, and those went out around August 19th, I believe. And the way we do it is we haul out a map and we highlight surrounding properties to make sure that we're meeting. There are legal requirements in the Virginia Code that we have to meet, but we always go above and beyond because we want to, our goal, it's apparent that perhaps we didn't achieve this goal as we wanted to, but the goal is to notify all of the adjacent property owners and then a little bit beyond that. We did a second mailing to the same list, and it was over Over 200 letters were sent out. The second time was a flyer for the community meeting. The information about the community meeting was also posted on the project website. We made a Facebook post. I believe the sign did get posted on the property because we were moving forward with a public hearing. The property itself does get posted prior to a public hearing. It's a yellow sign. It's pretty visible. So there
Hard to bite
are.
my tongue because I can tell you as a 3-year resident, I did not get any mailing. And I talked to several people the last 2 days and no one got anything from the county. And so I'm sorry, I am losing my patience. I just don't believe it. There was not a single thing sent to my house. My name is on the tax record. I'm shocked by this. I would love to find out the exact 200 people, name and address that you sent, but I'm going to pause to let you finish because I do want to have a chance for all of us who are the actual community to voice our opinion, but I am losing my patience.
Well, as a member of the Villa Del Rey court community, Franklin Commons, I did get 2 mailings and I saw it on Facebook.
None of the people I spoke to had it. No one else got that. In fact, it was one single good gesture that somebody got to us, and then I walked around and other people did too.
We also.
I'm happy you got that, but I can tell you a lot of the people I talked to did not.
We also notify condominium and homeowners associations with the expectation that they are going to distribute that information into their communities in case there are other folks that we may not have contact information for.
And by the way, for the people who are saying they got a note in their door, if you got it in the last 48 to 72 hours, it was probably my friend who's a neighbor or myself. So if you actually got this taped to your door, that was me.
Yeah, and I thank you for doing that because that's what needs to be done, but it shouldn't be community members doing that. It should be the county and the developers putting out that information. So thank you for doing that.
Because I'm part of the single family homes and I did not receive anything. Now you all do not have issues in sending me the tax bills. So why not send out this information about new communities being built in the same format?
And again, I would just reiterate, this is Megan, you know, these are all great questions. Without understanding where you all are living exactly, it's hard for us to check as it relates to our maps and for us to add you to those mailings. So please, I see a few people who have direct messaged me. Please go ahead and do that if you feel comfortable so that we can make sure again, this is a process. There will be future meetings, analysis, recommendations, public hearings, all of that. We want to make sure you're involved. So please let me know.
On Wesley Road, we were notified by Phil. He actually stopped by our house. We are 7225 Wesley Road. We are it's a small road, and I don't think any of us got any mail, any flyers, and we've been living here for 22 years, actually 23 years.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah, and nobody has gotten any kind of mailed notifications. So for the county to say, send us your email or your address, go on the public website and send a notification to everybody who is affected. It's not difficult.
It is clear that there was some sort of breakdown in our notification process. All we can do is acknowledge that, apologize for it, and promise to do better.
Well, and does that stop the development or the approval process that you guys have already done? Apologizing for not letting us know is one thing, but the approval process and letting it go forward is a total different conversation that we need to have.
And what my response to that is that nothing has been approved. The only board action that has been taken to date is authorization of a plan amendment, which allows staff to study the proposed change in density. We have not made a recommendation. It has not gone to public hearing. And maybe I'll back up a little bit and talk through that process, because nothing is official, nothing is final, nothing is approved until the Board of Supervisors takes action and votes.
Well,
So-
and that's all fine and good, but the developer has given our neighborhood a plan. So if it hasn't been approved, how is the developer put together a plan?
That's the process right there. So the comprehensive plan says how much density you can have. Right now, it's 4 to 5 units per acre. It could go up, that what we are studying is 5 to 8 units per acre. A separate process is that the developer has filed what's called a rezoning application. That is the actual approval that would allow them to build the townhouses that they are proposing. In order to have the staff review, and a rezoning, the way a rezoning works is the applicant files an application. It has a lot of information, a lot of studies, it has the plans, and staff reviews all of the information. That's why there's a plan. We need the information to make sure that it conforms with county ordinance, county policy, and then staff makes a recommendation. It goes to public hearing with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission listens to staff's recommendation, listens to the applicant's presentation, listens to any community members who might come. The Planning Commission votes, makes a recommendation. Again, this is a recommendation. And the whole package goes to the Board of Supervisors. They hear the staff recommendation, they hear the Planning Commission recommendation, they hear the applicant's presentation, and they hear any community input that comes to the public hearing. They then deliberate and vote. And that is the point at which things are approved and can go on to getting permits and construction. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Sophie, could I actually just add one thing
Yeah.
real quick? Sorry, the Franconia District Land Use Committee, to which your community and other surrounding HOAs or civic associations will almost certainly have representatives, will also have a role for both a presentation and a vote on a recommendation as well. And you all should have delegates to that.
Can you
Thank
say
you,
the
Matt.
can you say the name of that organization again?
Yeah,
The
the Franconia District Land Use Committee. Every HOA and civic association that chooses to opt in has the opportunity to send a delegate to the Land Use Committee, which is a citizen-driven advisory committee that advises the supervisor. So in this case, Supervisor Lusk, on their viewpoint as a at-large community body on various projects that are proposed inside the district. And certainly HOAs and civic associations that are either inside the community where the development that is being proposed or adjacent to it have a particularly weighty voice in those discussions when that recommendation is made.
Can you please add that into the chat?
So I have a question again for the person who is going to be developing the space that we're talking about. Is this going to be a development of single family homes? Is it going to be townhouses? Is it going to be apartments? What is the plan? And that is really what my concern is what is the density of that environment?
Well, that is why we wanted to have the applicant have their presentation.
And are
prior-
they here?
They are here. They are here.
Okay,
Yes,
then
I introduced them at the beginning.
Then let's hear it.
David, take it away.
Sure, and I appreciate that, Sophia, and I appreciate everyone's questions and comments that have been coming through. And I think one thing that I want to reiterate from the beginning that I think needs to be said again is from today, there is a staff report that needs to be drafted for both the plan amendment and the rezoning, as well as 2 sets of public hearings. And those public hearings are where you get the official certified notices sent to all the property owners, as well as those big wooden signs that I think I saw in some of the chats. So we are not by any means in a finished process by any level. My name is David Gill. I'm a land use attorney who works with a group known as JR Real Estate. and they are the ones who consolidated these roughly 5.8 acres together. And it's a site that we've been working on for a while. And when you guys say, you know, what is it going to be? The real answer there is we're hoping to get, as I think Megan correctly pointed out, your priorities to help shape what that vision could potentially be. We really were keying off what we saw was happening at Grandview and Franklin Commons to the south. And, you know, we've hosted a number of meetings with both of those HOAs, including on July 23rd and 24th. We had some picnics there and had your community meetings to give you some sense of what we were thinking about. The actual rezoning to implement any plan amendment has to happen after the public hearings for the plan amendment itself. So even from today, you know, realistically, you know, probably the first public hearing maybe this year for the plan amendment, maybe, but that's sort of the rough time frame that we're talking about. Sophia, if you don't mind just pulling up that plan set that you had, I'd just like to walk through that.
No, I want to I want to
Ma'am,
interrupt
can
again.
we
Ma'am,
actually
please, you
finish?
have to stop interrupting the
No,
meeting. Please let the
I
meeting
want-
go forward.
Sophia,
The
can you
whole
pull up the
point of
rezoning, please?
the whole point of this meeting, in my opinion, was to have community input. And I don't feel we've had community input of what the plan is.
Ma'am,
Because we-
respectfully, you've just asked for the applicant to present the plan, and he's trying to do that, and you continue to interrupt the presentation. So please let David present their.
Sure,
proposal.
we'll
Thank you.
let him continue.
So this is the plan itself, and it's somewhat offset an angle here. Folks were asking, you know, what is it we're trying to do? This is a black and white sort of high level version. To the northeast there would be what I would call is Villa Park Road. That's right across, frankly, where some of the Grandview townhomes are. And then it is a road that just extends through the property to the west, and right now shows a connection to Wesley. The reason it shows that connection, I know a number of folks here who live off Wesley, you know, from our perspective as JR, we don't particularly care about that application, I think, or that connection, excuse me. I do think, though, that the transportation staff saw that there was some benefit from emergency vehicle circulation around making that potential connection. But, you know, from our standpoint, we're not sure that that's entirely necessary. But we are showing a private street with 42 townhomes. Again, each one would have 4 specific parking spaces. One of the things we heard early on from Grandview was a desire to make sure there's no excess parking outside the community. So we are over parking by almost 60 spaces relative to the zoning code. So that's for just 42 townhomes, almost a space and a half extra per unit. And these would be 3-level townhomes. Our hope is that we think it could really contribute positively to the community in terms of investing and in terms of providing a high quality housing opportunities. We are exploring with Franklin Commons to the south ways to make pedestrian connections so that their community can link up to ours and be able to walk down our road. We would have, besides the tree save areas identified here and the oversized stormwater areas, we would in addition have several areas for dog parks and a playground as well. And those would be open to the residents of Grandview as well as part of this project. You know, again, I am here, and I want to emphasize this, to listen, to hear what your guys' priorities are. And I think just going through the chat and seeing a lot of these comments, I'm getting a good flavor for what we're hearing from some of the community. And again, we have gotten a lot of that in meeting with the boards of Grandview and Franklin Commons in the past. And I'm excited to hear from other folks and see what we can do to make this proposal right. This proposed density is actually, and when I say density, I mean the number of units is actually below what Franklin Commons and Grandview are at. This is roughly 7.2 or 42 units. So 7.2 dwelling units per acre, whereas the properties to the north and south are roughly 8. Katie's asked a question about the price of the townhomes. That's a fair question, and let me get back with JR specifically on that point for what we think the price point would be. I could tell you roughly what they might be if they were online today. But the way this process works is even if everything went right from my perspective of going through the public hearing process, even if we get approved through both sets of public hearings, there's still a year-long technical review called site plan process, where we final engineer everything that we've laid out, the county issues permits, and we could actually begin construction. That is a year-long process. So even from where we're sitting here today, I would be very surprised if we could break ground before the 2024, spring of 2024. So that's, a sort of rough time frame, even if everything moved forward exactly as we hope it does. We spent a lot of time oversizing the stormwater and studying the stormwater to ensure that there's no issues there. We spent special attention to tree save. That's why we have those strategic areas located up against Wesley on the west, and where some of the higher quality trees are up against Grandview there on the northeast side. I'll keep my presentation short because I do want to hear from the community. That's our goal for this process, and happy to answer specific questions as they arise. Thank you.
And David, this is Megan. I think a couple questions in the chat, I think, relate back to you. Perhaps could you elaborate on how you all are looking at the additional traffic or the work that you've done to analyze traffic? And then also there's a question about a connection to Villa Del Rey, the Villa Del Rey townhouses. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly. So yeah, I assume we were saying Villa Del Rey. It's the same as the Franklin Commons off that road to the south. There's a small, and it's somewhat hard to see, break in your community where folks are my understanding is right now informally cutting across this property to get to the existing overpass and to Springfield itself. We'd like to at least formalize that and offer that as a path to the community. Right now, we're envisioning it as wood chip up until it meets our sidewalk, and then you would use our sidewalks to get further out as you go up to Villa Park proper and to the east, if you're a pedestrian. In terms of the traffic study, we have submitted one of those as well. We're happy to provide the results. Again, given the relatively low density here, relative to the fact that everything to sort of west and east all filters out onto Villa Park, from a true traffic perspective, there's, to be frank, not a significant impact, but you guys live it every day. You understand how the parking works out there. And that's the one thing we've heard from Grandview from day one is you can't make the community parking any worse. And that's what we've been really focused on.
David, I appreciate you going through this, and it's helpful to hear from you as the attorney for the group. For the community members that don't know, JR Real Estate Group, they make their money rezoning and sectioning properties. They've done this in Manassas. They've done this in Oakton. Their mission is to buy properties or buy land that is zoned for so many houses on an acre and then building on top of that. That is what would happen here. This would be a influx of high density residential. And for many of the people here are low density or already feel that it's swamped or congested. I appreciate that you've done your traffic studies, but like you said, Megan, David, Sophia, Matt, Brian, none of you live in this area. All the members on this call that I've talked to have some really strong concerns. And they're worried that the infrastructure in this area cannot support it, that the schools are over inundated, that the police forces are overwhelmed, that there is a parking concern. And I'm actually happy you took that one on, and I commend you for trying to do something about that. When I look at this, I share their concerns, and I don't think it's been properly thought out. And I guess, like most people on this call, frankly, the lack of notice from the county only exacerbates that situation. And so I can tell you, as a resident who lives here, right at the intersection of Ben Franklin and Wesley, I'm not at all excited for this. In fact, I'm against this as it's laid out. But I want to give a chance to the other community members. Did I talk to them? I'll tell you this. I didn't come across a single resident in any of the single attached homes that was happy about this. So I'd like to, give some time, let them voice their opinion. But thanks, David, but I'm not at all impressed.
Yeah, 100%.
No, and I will 100% back that assessment. It was not put out to the residents. It is not what anybody who lives there wants. And for Fairfax County to say, oh, okay, we're going to put a whole bunch of these townhouses in this place right backing up to us. No. And I don't care if people say, oh, not in my backyard. Yeah, not in my backyard. Put it in your backyard.
Yeah, I agree 100% there. And really, like, if you guys have proposed, like, you know, single family homes on half-acre properties, like, you know, it'd be totally cool. But that area is severely congested when it comes to traffic.
Absolutely,
a lot of the
absolutely. If
traffic
if we're
actually-
talking single family homes, absolutely. Whoever just said that, agree. But we're talking either condensed townhouses or apartment buildings. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and if you guys actually look and do a true traffic study, like, you'll see how much traffic is backed up. Like Fridays when Chick-fil-A was approved, which I feel like that was kind of snuck into. Like, Backwick Road is horrendous around lunchtime, and you'll see on Sundays it's fully cool. So again, if you're doing a traffic study, I'd want to see, like, when you're looking at traffic, you know, the timing.
Yeah, the only time you can do a traffic study is on Sunday when
Okay,
when
Thank
Chick-fil-A is off.
thank you for your comments. As we indicated at the beginning of the meeting, we asked that people raise their hands, and I see that Alexei and Elizabeth Semenyov have their hands raised, so I'd like to acknowledge them and let them have a chance to speak.
Thank you very much. I was losing hope. Our concern is also primarily with the traffic impact, but very specific. Our house is on Wesley Road, right next to a proposed property, and the reason we bought it is that we have a legally blind son. When we bought the property 30 years ago, it was important to us that it was a dead end, because he walks around with a stick, like he is light sensitive, but he is legally blind. Not enough vision to move around without a stick. He, until a year ago, he lived with us. Right now, he and his wife live in Woodbridge and visit often. And they have a newborn son, our grandson, who is 4 months old now. It's too early to say if he has the same Stargardt disease condition, because it develops around 4-year old age, but with a significant probability he is going to have some form of the same condition. And that means that we will have a grandson visiting who is visually impaired, and having extra traffic on Wesley Road is just unacceptable to us. We discussed that, by the way, with the developer when they visited us, and I think that's the reason that whoever was presenting mentioned that the developer is agreeable to not opening Wesley. However, as also the developer mentioned in this presentation, that having so many houses in this area with just one exit would be unacceptable to the county. The county will insist on having an emergency exit to the Wesley, even if Villa Park is the primary connection. And then the 4 houses on the Wesley Road, including ours, which is the last one on the right as you go on Wesley Road towards the new proposed development, will no longer be a dead end. It will be a very dangerous condition for our family.
Thank you, Lexi. And yes, we're very aware of your son's condition, and that I think you correctly phrased it as we have, is, you know, how that connection works is really important to you guys. And from our point of view, whether the connection is made or not is we're fine with either solution, I guess. But obviously, I think everyone's heard from where you guys are at.
Well, as it stands, just to make myself clear, as it stands, we are opposed to the proposal because we see it as significant increase in the traffic with a connection to Wesley, and not only as an emergency exit, I suspect, but eventually as an exit convenient for people who want to get not to the backlit but to Old King Mill Road directly through Wesley to down to Ridgeway. So the impact in terms of the traffic and in terms of parking, because I do suspect that people will be parking outside, or at least some people will be parking outside the development, and that will include Wesley Road as well.
So going forward, where should we kind of put our comments in?
In terms of this meeting or in terms of the whole process?
The terms of this meeting being this townhouse community that's going behind our house. So whether it's so that's what my concern is.
Thank you. We understand your concern. I'm gonna drop it again. Earlier I put the project website in the chat. I'm putting it in the chat one more time. So if that is where we keep the project page updated, we will post the recording of this meeting on the page. We will post the presentation that I gave on the project page. And so in terms of ways to provide input, you are providing input tonight. We are hearing everything you're saying. You know, you can work with, you can talk to your representatives. Matt from Supervisor Lusk's office is on the call this evening, so he is hearing everything that is being said as well, and he will discuss this with the supervisor. The Franconia District Land Use Committee that Matt mentioned is another way for the community to get involved and to express your opinions. As Matt indicated, there are opportunities for representatives from your community to join the committee if you're not already. Matt is definitely the person to talk to about that. I don't have that process, but the Franconia District land use meetings happen once a month. They have their own notification process. So there are a number of ways for you to express your opinion, and that is, again, why we're here this evening. And we'll continue to take comments, questions. I believe my email address is on the website, but we can put that in the chat as well. You can send me your comments. David, can you put your email in the chat so that people can get in touch with you and through your client? So, we do want to hear what people have to say. That that is why we're here this evening. And just a quick note. There was a question about how to raise your hand. I went back, hopefully you can see the slide. So you click the reactions button right here. It brings up a list, and you can choose the hand icon, and that raises your hand. Clicking it a second time lowers your hand. I'm going to move to Jeff and Sarah. You're still on mute.
I got it now. Thank you. So I had put in there about the Caden Woods property. If people remember back when that was developed, that was 1 to 2 houses per acre, and it got jumped up to 4 or 5, and now there's 21 houses back there. And all of the promises for water drainage and tree conservation, all of it went out the window. We spent so much time with Jeff McKay trying to make sure that everything was taken care of that we just ended up having to give up. I don't want to see that happen again. Wesley Road already, it's a quiet community. Everybody that's on the Wesley, Ridgeway, Oriole, Spring area is infinitely familiar with the amount of people that cut through to get to the parkway. They're already doing that. This is just going to
Speeding.
increase through this. This is going to give us another pipe stem through Wesley Road to the Parkway. And we don't have sidewalks. We have very few street lights. At night, if people are walking their dogs or kids are out, Halloween was a pretty scary thing, having cars flying through between kids walking across the street. Probably the right reason we don't have a lot of kids doing that anymore.
We have issues with people cutting through to the Parkway from the Catonville Woods and Delray going 45 miles an hour. I mean, we don't have speed bumps. We've tried to address these issues, but it's basically a huge safety issue. And with the amount of traffic that comes through here during rush hour in the morning and in the evening, it's not comparable to actually being comfortable with having 100 more cars added to it.
I'm not even sure why we even need to have these other townhouses. We're not in a shortage for townhouses in Springfield or anything like that.
Jeff and Sarah, I appreciate your comments and certainly taking note of them. I will say that's one of the things that this process will help try and get to is there are these 4 separate public hearings that are in the future. At the end of it, we do end up with a proffered document that is for lack of a better term, the contract that makes all of these promises binding on the project itself.
I can relate to that, and I appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
But I know from past experience, years of fighting with developers for Caton Woods, that eventually you just have to give up. They just keep pushing it to the point where a 50-foot tree line for protection becomes a 25-foot tree line of do not disturb. Oh, do not disturb means, oh, look at all the trees died. Look, people put grass in there and they put sheds in there, smack their hand and they would say, oh, well, we tried and now we got almost no trees on the border anymore because of that.
30 feet from my back door is a deck to the other neighbors, but you know, they only got smacked for a little bit of a fine. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did.
And this is something that I think is going to keep happening, even barring all there's no process to make these heard and acted upon.
We have nothing but bad faith with the county.
Sure. Appreciate it, guys. And there's a lot of questions. I just wanted to raise one other thing quickly. You had mentioned traffic calming. That's something we'd be certainly supportive as well. And had Grandview's HOA board had mentioned us specifically that we would be partnering with them on ways to provide traffic calming on Villa Park itself. But I'll let other people jump in with questions.
Well,
Sophia.
parking on Villa Park is outrageous as it is. How is that going to be mitigated?
I'm sorry, we're gonna call on John Schroeder next. He has his hand up.
Sorry, of course.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hey, so I just wanted to be clear that the strategic plan calls for somewhere between 25 homes on that area.
Roughly 4 to 5, and we're 5.8 acres, so 29 to 25. Yes.
So 25 to 29 homes. If the amendment to the strategic plan is denied, would the builder still build those 25 to 29 single family homes and then just up the price to capture their money?
Right. So, you know, the math doesn't quite always work that way when you go from detached to townhomes. It just doesn't. And we still have to make the same technical requirements in terms of stormwater and, you know, probably, yes, we're providing less open space. But that process still would also require a rezoning to implement even under the existing plan. And so I think from our perspective, we thought we could deliver more community benefits by having the flexibility of a potential plan amendment here to look at housing that better match what was happening at Franklin Farm or Franklin Commons and Grandview.
Except for that it doesn't mitigate the traffic issue like most people are afraid.
Understood. And the traffic issue is because everything feeds out to Villa Park. I mean, and that's really the challenge, whether, you know, we were here or not, that is going to continue to be a challenge because it is.
And I guess I don't really understand why rezoning is required if you would comply with the current comprehensive plan.
John, that's a great question. Our existing zoning is R1, which is 1 unit to the acre. So a by right, meaning we do not have a public hearing process, would be, roughly 5 or 6 homes, depending on how we could make it work with the existing. We would rezone to implement what is the current comprehensive plan of 4 to 5, which would be very comparable to what you see on Wesley now, as far as a single family detached type product. Or what we're proposing here is to look at townhomes that matches the density of the two properties that are adjacent to us to the north and south.
I think we understand what's being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we
Katie,
do. I think what is not being really addressed is the traffic and the amount of people who are going to be in the environment.
Thank you. A more detailed traffic analysis is part of the rezoning process. At the plan amendment stage, we keep it high level and are primarily looking at things like connectivity, which is where the recommendation for a connection to Wesley Road came from, and circulation, and obviously congestion is part of that, but the specifics, that's why I gave sort of the overview at the beginning of this to try to differentiate a little bit between the plan amendment and the rezoning process. Katie, I know you had your hand up. Did you still have a question?
I did, but others had their hand up before me, so I want to make sure they get heard. But I put my question in the chat, which was David just mentioned the community benefits, and I haven't heard what those community benefits are. So once the others go, I would like that answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I see John still has his hand up. Alexi, did you have another question?
Yes, you mentioned during your initial presentation that you also look at the environmental impact, at least in terms of tree canopy. Do you also look at wildlife? The whole Springvale neighborhood was originally built into old growth forest, and it has very active wildlife. It has deer, foxes, coyotes, a number of smaller mammals like chipmunks and others. And the area that we specifically are talking about right now has a couple of foxes and a number of deers. I don't think it has coyotes, but coyotes are in some other parts of Springvale. Is that a concern to you at all?
I think it's something that we are asked by staff to take into account as part of the process. That's especially in terms of trying to get to a tree preservation and a tree canopy number that makes sense for the site. So when we look at wildlife specifically, it's not like we go out and do an inventory of wildlife that live there. No. But from our perspective, we are focused on trying to maximize the tree preservation. That's been a focus. A lot of the discussion with staff is how do we achieve that.
Yeah, but
And I'll add to that answer.
Not just specifically around the proposed development, but the character of the whole Springvale neighborhood. As I said, it's an old growth neighborhood. It was not clear-cutted when it was originally developed. The old trees were left in strategic locations throughout Springvale, which allowed both the trees and wildlife to flourish. This area is one of the few remaining areas outside of the creek which runs through the lower part of Springvale, where wildlife thrives. So developing it will change the character of the whole Springvale, not just the houses right next to it.
Yeah, and I want to add to David's answer in that tree preservation has been a very large topic of discussion between the applicant and staff throughout this whole process. In addition, the county has policies about native plantings, and that is intended to help the wildlife, help the ecology, make sure we're not introducing invasive species into the area, which is good for the habitat, good for the environment all around. So that is a consideration. It may not be specifically spelled out as wildlife policies, but it does, it is part of our considerations.
But what exactly are you guys doing? That was a lot of generalized mumbo jumbo. I want to hear what exactly you're doing to preserve that wildlife that we have going on.
So again, the comprehensive plan itself is general. So what we're talking about with the plan amendment is going to be general policies. There are a lot of policies. There's a policy plan that has an environment section. And in that section, there's language about stormwater management, about planting materials, about green building, about noise, about light. There's a lot of policy in the policy plan, and it is relatively general. Where the details come in and the specifics come in is with the rezoning process, is with the development plan that we showed earlier that is not approved, but it is what the applicant has submitted for staff to review. Staff's review includes looking at all of the characteristics of the site and all of the information. We have a lot of different specialties. And Brian, why don't you talk a little bit more about the rezoning process? Brian Berteo is the staff coordinator for the rezoning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is, as both Sophia and David mentioned, it's kind of a two-step process, plan amendment, rezoning. So the plan amendment is, much more general in nature. The rezoning is where that diagram, the plan that you saw earlier, comes from. The applicant, in this case, JR Real Estate, David Gill's representing, creates that plan. They submit it to us to review, and it is distributed to a whole host of county agencies to examine the impacts of the proposed development and to ensure that it conforms with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. So who looks at that? The Fairfax County Department of Transportation is examining it to both look at the transportation impacts, but also how the transportation infrastructure will fit into the existing network. We have environmental reviewers, stormwater, wastewater, the Fairfax Water looks at the proposed development to examine the impacts, ensure that adequate service can be maintained. So we send it off to a whole host of county agencies to review it again to ensure that any of the impacts are properly mitigated, that the infrastructure is capable of supporting the development, and that it meets the guidance, both the comprehensive plan specific to this site, but again, those larger county goals that Sophia mentioned that relate to a healthy environment and environmental preservation.
Thank you, Brian. I would just wanted to call attention. There's a really good question, Sophia, in the chat about if this is allowed, if this is being proposed as townhouses, are they allowed to change their mind and build something else like low-income apartments? And that was, for example, that's a direct quote. Could you just talk about the role of the comprehensive plan and the zoning to be able to spell out what are the expectations for development?
Certainly. So I apologize. I don't know how I muted myself there. That's a really good question. In terms of the comprehensive plan sets a limit on how much density can be developed. So how many units can be developed? In this case, we're looking at up to 8 units per acre. In terms of whether or not they could then turn around and build apartments, the short answer is unlikely. Without a zoning approval, the answer is no. So you need to get the zoning approval has to be in compliance. It has to has to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So right now, the comprehensive plan says 4 to 5 units per acre. So that is the maximum amount of development that can occur according to the comprehensive plan. The zoning, there's a mismatch between the zoning and the comprehensive plan in this case. The zoning is R1, so that would be single family houses. So the process is the applicant, the Board of Supervisors has authorized staff to study a plan amendment that would increase the amount of density permitted. 8 units or 8.5 units, which was the authorization, but right now staff thinks that 8.5 units is too intense. So we're recommending 5 to 8, which is one of the categories. The comprehensive plan has different sort of groupings of units. So we've got 4 to 5, we've got 5 to 8, 8 to 12, and so forth. So what we're considering now is 5 to 8, which would generally result in townhouse style development. In order to build 8 units per acre, or the 5 to 8 units per acre, the applicant has to rezone the property. They are not allowed to build 8 units per acre without rezoning the property, because right now they're only permitted to build 1 unit per acre. So about 5 or 6 units, as David mentioned before. We don't have any control over what the units are priced at, but they wouldn't be able to build apartments in an 8 unit per acre zoning district.
That's right, Sophia. And the applicant has requested to rezone this property to R8, which only allows single family detached and single family attached housing, so townhomes. So that A. B, as part of the rezoning, they have to submit, it's called a general development plan, and that's the plan that Sophia had submitted earlier. And that is part of what the Board of Supervisors approves in rezoning, and any development that comes in has to substantially conform with the general development plan.
Thank you, Brian and Sophia. There's also a hand raised. I'm not sure. I don't think Scott's iPhone has had a chance to speak.
Yeah, I was going to call on him next. Thank you. Scott?
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to obtain a little bit of clarity because there's been a lot of good discussion so far. What I understand is that right now the comprehensive plan was zoned for the 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre, and the amendment would be pushing that up to 8 dwelling units per acre. I just want to check that that's correct before I move forward.
Yes, the comprehensive plan currently says you can have 4 to 5 units per acre. What we're considering with the plan amendment is 5 to 8 units per acre.
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to be clear that everyone's raised great points about, given the 2 choices, it would be obvious that the lower dwelling units per acre would be better for everybody living close to that area, because the tree line would be able to be protected better, the wildlife would have more room, and the value of all of those homes would be higher, which would be, not the case if you were trying to squeeze more people and more cars and congestion into the area. So what I haven't heard, talked about yet is what the actual process is by which members of the community can formally oppose or protest this amendment in a way that will be heard and will be considered by the board?
So I'll call your attention again. Sorry, Matt, to Matt Reniger. He is Supervisor Lusk's Chief of Staff. I'm sure he will be having a conversation with Supervisor Lusk about this meeting as soon as they can get that scheduled. You know, the ultimate decision makers in this process are the Board of Supervisors. So, you know, talking to your board member, talking to your planning commissioner, Dan Lagana, going to the Franconia District Land Use Committee, making sure that your community has representative on that. This meeting is, I mean, we have heard your message loud and clear. And we've got staff on the call. We've got the applicant's representative on the call. I don't know, David, if anyone from your client's team is on the call.
Yeah, we're listening.
But
That was what we're here to do, is listen.
I'm sorry.
Can I be just a little bit more explicit, maybe? Because this is Matt from Supervisor Lusk's office. So let me try to answer your question a little bit more directly. I think that we've been clear on kind of what this evening entails and that this has been an opportunity for you. But let me go step by step and try to tell you like explicitly how you guys can weigh in. So besides these community meetings that are being organized by staff, that it sounds like we're going to have a conversation with Megan's team on noticing for those and making sure that we cast a wider net. The next kind of like practical step in terms of, I think your question was more about how you can have your voice heard by the board, would be the land use committee. So your planning commissioner, Franconia District Planning Commissioner Lagana, attends every Franconia District Land Use Committee meeting. And that's kind of like your gateway to the board, right? So you all can come and give public testimony and input and be part of the conversation at those meetings when it comes for its various presentation. Then when it goes to the board, again, or to the planning commission, you will again have an opportunity not just to, voice your concerns, raise questions, raise, anything that you feel is lingering after the meetings that staff and the applicant have organized for you. You'll be able to do that again at the planning commission, and all of that is noticed and publicly accessible. And I'm happy to get you all of that information. I've put my email in the chat. And then again, you'll have that entire opportunity yet again when it comes before the Board of Supervisors. So in terms of directly accessing or influencing or making your position known to the board, all three of those opportunities are closely watched by Supervisor Lusk and are obviously going to be monitored and considered and looked at by the whole board when it comes before them for a decision. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Matt, can you expand on one thing? Where I'm still worried about getting a public notice, and Matt does a very thorough response, by the way. Can you let us know publicly on what websites you're required to post this information? Because quite frankly, I still feel we weren't notified about this meeting properly. And
so I'm going to defer to Megan. I'm going to defer to Megan. I'm really sorry what exactly the public, I know there are very specific regulations about notifying, and so Megan, I might have to defer to you on that because again, our office doesn't send out the notices. I will say, and again, I'm just going to speak out of turn a little bit here. Obviously I'm still in the meeting, so I haven't discussed this with Supervisor Lusk, but as often happens with cases where we have a little bit of contention, like it feels like we have here tonight, this certainly isn't required, but Supervisor Lusk makes the determination to go kind of above and beyond and hold his own community meeting. So kind of along the lines of what we have had here tonight, but more of a listening session for him to hear directly from you all. And I'm going to need to go back and confer with him, but my recommendation after tonight's discussion will certainly be to probably go ahead and reach out to your community to organize something like that. And in that instance, our office would be responsible for outreaching and noticing with the community, and that would be coming directly from us.
Great, I appreciate that, but from Matt or from Megan, somebody just please tell me the public website that we can get information from. Because I
just put it in the chat. I just put it in the chat for the third time this evening. So that is the plan amendment website.
Thank you.
Information about the plan amendment can be found there, and we try very hard to keep it up to date.
Yeah, and I also put in the chat as well the additional means of receiving notifications about planning activities. There is a listserv email address that you can sign up for. And that's on the county's website. That website is posted in my latest chat to you. And then there's also a Facebook page if you belong to Facebook. where notices are published as well. We also publish the boards that you all mentioned. They go up on site when there is a public hearing that's scheduled and that will happen, that won't be deferred. Those will be posted on the site as well. You'll see them go up at the latest by 3. We try to get them up by 4 weeks, so a month ahead of any hearing. We'll also, additionally, we'll be sending out mailings again for the next meeting. But understanding that there are limitations to that, based on this conversation, we'll do our best with that. The other kind of catch-all that we try to do is we look at a radius of a half mile around any site and pull the HOA, the homeowners association or the civic association contact information from the county to capture that wider net that Matt had mentioned. If that information is not current and up to date, or if you don't have an HOA or a civic association, there is a problem with that. So again, we can work with Matt's office and you all to try to figure out, what is that proper radius that we should be notifying to. And then the last piece is that Supervisor Lusk also has a district newsletter, which quite frankly, when we do surveys about how people get information, that actually seems to be one of the highest read communication tools. So I don't mean to put a plug in for your office, Matt, but I know we work with you all to get those announcements in your district newsletters. And that is a great source of information, not just for planning events, but also for local activities and efforts that are underway beyond land use.
So we usually send that out every Friday. It's very extensive. It makes for heavy reading if you really want to get into the details, but anyone who wants to be added to that list, again, my email's in the chat. I'm happy to add you to the list. We are looking at right now kind of a opt-out system to get more people added to it. So anyone who emails us, adding them to that, but we're working through that right now. So the point is, if you haven't opted in, you're not getting it. But if you email me, I will put you on it.
Yeah, and we did share a notice of this meeting with Supervisor Lusk's office and asked that it be included in the newsletter. Hopefully it was. I just realized I'm not on that list, so I probably should be, so I can make sure these things go out. But we are always, I think Megan said this before, we are always looking for ways to broaden our outreach, and we are learning lessons as we go. We've certainly learned some lessons this evening, so we appreciate all of the feedback. Katie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate my question from before was sort of, there was mention of the community benefits, and I would just like to hear what those are from the developer and from the county's point of view, because I haven't really heard any benefits yet, and I try to be a measured person, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll just jump in because it gets a little bit of what Scott was asking about, the choice between 4 to 5 acres and looking at this as 5 to 8. And I think from our perspective is it allows us to have a discussion about a housing type that allows us to provide a lot more parking than you would get otherwise, which we heard was a concern of the Grandview community. It allows us to open up our dog park and our playgrounds to the community as a whole. It allows us to achieve a lot more tree save than would happen if we went even, frankly, by right. Allows us to achieve a bigger tree canopy, allows us to over-detain on stormwater. So those are the issues that we had heard from some of the initial meetings with the HOA boards. And we think having the tool of this process is going to be a better result at the end of it than if we were forced to try and make it work at 4 to 5 units the acre. So our open space requirement, for example, is roughly 1.3 acres above and beyond what would be required. It is 2.7 acres of this site would be open space. So that's significantly more than you get in under a 4 to 5 unit per acre development. So, it's some of those benefits that we're trying to balance as part of this process.
I appreciate that. It's more of why do we need this development at all, and not why are you doing more parking or why are you doing certain green spaces or dog parks, but it's more why do we need this at all? And I think that's more of a question for the county probably, because you're obviously going to have your answers because you're trying to develop it. But I think from the county's perspective, I would like to know the answer to that.
And to be clear, the county doesn't have a position on it at this point, right? Like there's an application process. The Supervisor Lusk, at least speaking from our office perspective, doesn't take a position on land use applications until we've gone through the entirety of the process, of which this night's conversation is a part of it. So from Supervisor Lusk's perspective, the county does not have a position on this project.
Yeah, we don't have a staff position on this as yet. We are examining all the considerations that I outlined previously. We are listening to the community feedback, and we're taking everything into consideration. We don't have a recommendation at this time.
And I will just say, Kate, just to be really blunt about it, you're absolutely right. From a developer's perspective, we have our very own market view of it. But I will say this is an investment in the community. You know, we don't go through this process that is frankly, very time consuming, has a lot of community impact and a lot of community discussions behind it. And I will say, I think the townhomes we are looking at will be high quality and frankly at price points that we'll see almost even frankly the single family detached in the neighborhood when they're on the market.
I apologize for cutting in. I don't seem to have a hand raise button. I don't know if I don't have my bottom set up right or anything, but we're Carl and Bro Pudliner. We've been on Wesley Road for 34 years and seen a lot of changes in the county. And along the lines that had come up of where the incentive was to get the higher density, it's currently R1, and you've stated that the county has no stake in it or no view in it. I'm just trying to understand the process to rezone. So what you're saying, public officials never look at something and say, hey, that should be developed and let's up the density because it fits in better. Does that all come from private enterprise that wants to develop that parcel of land? Is that where all the incentive comes from to change the zoning on it?
I will wear my hat as a developer here and let the county answer for themselves. Largely, the rezoning process is entirely applicant and property owner driven. It's very, very rare, unless it is county owned property, to the county would ever initiate a rezoning.
That's absolutely right, David.
Yes, that's true. I'm going to call on Em. I don't think Em has asked any questions yet.
Yeah, so you talked about benefits to the area, or those just sound more like benefits to the new community that's being developed? There is no real benefit for the single detached homes that's within the area.
These would the open space or sidewalks would be open to the community as a whole.
Okay. That does sound like a political answer, right? But how does those new residents of that community feel about everybody from the older community walking their dogs, coming into their community? That doesn't sound pleasing for them.
Right, and that is part of the balancing on our end. I mean, if this was a pure market standpoint, yeah, we would keep it for a benefit for solely for our community. But one of the things we had heard early on from the Grandview HOA and Franklin Commons HOA was the desire to see more parks, open spaces that are available to the community overall.
Okay, I understand that, but many of us who live in these single detached homes, we don't have an HOA, so we don't have a voice in this fight at this moment. You're just talking to individuals. So where did the HOA come in at?
Sorry, so the two HOAs I'm referring to were the Grandview HOA to the north and the Franklin Commons to the south, because those were the similar density townhomes that we were trying to mirror, and that our access point was directly opposite Grandview's playground, and then Franklin Commons would have pedestrian connection through our site, given a number of their residents right now walk through the property as it is, and we want to formalize that connection.
Okay, but still, it's still not sounding like a benefit to the others of an older community, the single detached homes.
Right, and you would have the right to use the sidewalks as well. It's not just the HOAs, it would be for the public at large. We would put what are called public access easements, so that the community or public, it doesn't even have to be anybody in the area, theoretically, would have access to those amenities.
Okay, now how about some other benefits as far as speed bumps for those 100 some odd cars coming out of that community?
We're happy to put speed bumps on the road we control. and cooperate with Grandview on the public road, which requires a separate process with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And I'm not going to put words in their mouth because they're not on this call, but there's a separate process called RTAP for putting traffic calming on public roads.
Yeah,
And
and I've
we'd
been
be
part of
eager to be part of that.
I've been part of speed bump studies with North Springfield in the past, and those have never been improved. Just to give people an idea.
So
Thank
again, my
you.
email's in the chat, everyone. The traffic calming and speed hump process is community driven. You all have to vote on it as a community, and there's rules based around the and like the vicinity of the point where the speed bumps would go in and the homes within that geography. If you email me and you want to initiate it, we're happy to help you do that. But it's not something that the county ultimately approves or not. We set up a process, and you as a community have to decide to implement them within that process.
Matt, could you drop your email again? I think there's been a lot of conversation.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. And then David, I was going to ask if you could expand one thing on the answer that you just shared. And I know it's probably not as applicable in this project because it's a little bit of a smaller one, but I have attended some of the earlier community meetings of which the dog park idea kind of grew out of. Can you explain the concept of proffers to the folks on the call? When they talk about community benefit, this is still a part of an ongoing conversation. And if there are community benefits that need to be identified and discussed, how that proffer process works and what it would mean to the community.
Thanks, Matt. And I've been doing this now for 19 years, going through this rezoning process, largely almost entirely in Fairfax County. And I think to the county's credit, they have developed what's called a proffer process, which is a contractual document that has to be circulated prior to the public hearing on the rezoning in front of the Board of Supervisors. The property owner signs it, and when they sign it and it is approved by the board under Virginia law, that becomes the binding specific set of promises that bind that property. It runs with the land, so if we ever sell the property or individual homeowners in the future saying, I didn't get notice of it, it doesn't matter. Those are the binding rules on the property. And those rules are called proffers, meaning the applicant is offering or proffering those to the county to either offset impacts or guarantee guarantee the public benefits that I'm talking about. So, to be perfectly frank, I think everybody's goal with this process is that picture that we're showing, what I'm saying is binding, because I think, as you heard from Jeff and Sarah, there have been issues in the past, to be frank, and sometimes individual developers and how they've implemented, and they'll try to yada yada through the process, and you end up with you guys holding the bag. And that's absolutely what the proffers are supposed to, and frankly do in a lot of ways, help guarantee, because they are binding, they run with the land. The only way to amend them would be to go back through this entire process all over again. So that's how I think the promises that we make today actually is where the rubber meets the road at the end of the day.
Thank you, David. Alexia, I see your hand again.
Hi. So my question is actually to you. So right now you mentioned you do not have a recommendation, but eventually you and your colleagues are going to present a report, a staff report or study of the question, and that I suppose will contain a recommendation to the board.
Yes.
Is correct? So at the moment, you have the proposal from the developer, and obviously the developer raises points of why the proposal is good. And you have community impact based on this meeting, which is unanimously opposed to the new development. So how are you going to weigh that situation? Are you going to recommend the developer's plan and simply note that the community is opposed to it, or you're going to document the opposition and based on that opposition recommend that the development does not proceed? In either case, your recommendation goes to the board, and even though we as members of community still have an opportunity to input our opinion into the process, it is likely that the board will follow the recommendation of the staff. So how do we influence the recommendation that eventually you are going to present to the board?
Right. So this is, again, going back to how this is a two-step process. There is the plan amendment where we are the request to increase the density allowed to up to 8 acres. Staff will make a recommendation on that in the comprehensive plan. Following that, and there will be planning commission and board of supervisors hearings on the plan amendment about increasing the potential density on the site. Following that, the developer's proposal will be reviewed, studied, and go through a separate public hearing process. After the plan amendment is or is not approved by the Board of Supervisors. And that's where a lot of those details come down, where the proffers that David just discussed will be developed. So the plan amendment, if it is recommended for recommended for adoption by staff and then, goes through and is ultimately adopted, that just opens the door. It allows the potential density of up to 8 units per acre. And currently the density is capped at 5 units per acre. Yeah, per plan.
I understand that there are many other steps to the process, but obviously we want to influence the process at the beginning rather than at the end. Mm-hmm. If there are already recommendations from the staff that the proposed plan should be adopted, it will be much more difficult for us to go against that recommendation. So how do we make sure that your recommendation not just notes our opposition to the proposal, but actually accepts our position as the correct one? Because eventually you will have to choose between either supporting the proposal of the developer or supporting the opposition from the community.
I think the community wants to know how we could voice for your comprehensive plan recommendation not to go forward with it, not to do the comprehensive recommendation of the plan, to keep the current comprehensive plan as it is. And David, shaking your head, is that not a possibility, or?
No.
And
Sorry,
if I could interject, let me just try to answer this question. It's a great one. I mean, from the staff's perspective, we provide a professional recommendation based on county policies that we have within our comprehensive plan. So that relates to how does the proposal fit into the neighborhood, how are what impacts there are on the surrounding area, and that are created by the proposed plan change, and how can those be mitigated or not. We look at environmental concerns, we look at, what they said, what Sophia mentioned about tree preservation. So there's a whole slew of different county policies that we look at beyond just community discussion. In general, the community comments and what you all are talking about, it's very similar to many of the policies that are already established in our comprehensive plan. So there is that, unison. And so when we put out a staff recommendation, there is a discussion about, how is this proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood? Is it not? Things like that. There isn't always, though, an opportunity. There isn't always alignment with county staff and the communities that surround it. And I'll put that out there because I think that's important for you all to know, because sometimes if there are larger county priorities, such as, maybe the county is really prioritizing the need for additional housing, right? In the county, there's a affordable housing problem. And, we're looking for opportunities to, have smart growth and put additional density in the right place. I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but I just want to sort of mention that there is that.
Yeah, and
I think it's important for you to know. Yeah. And so
honesty to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I want to make sure that you know that you all are seeing this, that you know right now we're hearing what the community priorities are. We need to weigh that against what our comprehensive plan policy says, both at the local level and then also at the countywide level. So, you know, we're going to do that. Our intent is to come back to you all. And we'll have to, you know, schedule another meeting to walk through the firm analysis, what we've done, and the recommendation. And as well, Matt had said that there is also the Lee District Land Use Committee. That's a district-wide representation of different communities throughout the Lee District that also looks at this. They typically vote
Franconia District.
on. Oh, sorry, Franconia District. Yes, yeah. The change hasn't been made officially until, I guess, to take effect on December. But right, the Franconia District Land Use Committee, you know, they'll typically vote on those. That is a public meeting, as Matt had said, and there's an opportunity for community representatives to speak typically at that, to voice their opinion, and also talk to and try to, you know, provide an opinion to the representatives that are on that before they vote. And then there's also the public hearings, because again, staff recommendation, I will say, is not always what ends up happening and ends up being adopted, because there are other influences when it goes through the Planning Commission and the board. So that's why it's important to have those public hearings. So again, if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer that, but hopefully that gets at some of the question that you had asked.
I think it did in part, and I appreciate that it can't be easy to jump on a call with a bunch of people shouting at you at night. And so I thank community staff for doing that. I mean, that was the first honesty that I heard during this call. You do have an incentive for affordable housing. You want to show that. That is one of the drivers that is running this and why you work with a developer like JR. So I do appreciate that frank response. I'll let those Scott, Alexi, and others that have their hand raised speak.
And I just want to concisely maybe add a punctuation to what Megan said, because I don't think Megan said that we had a priority for affordable housing on that site. I think she was using that as a hypothetical, but
Yes.
I would say I wouldn't focus your advocacy, and I'm saying this kind of against my own self-interest here because it's going to create a lot of work for me, but don't focus your advocacy on trying to influence the staff recommendation. The staff are going to make the recommendation based off of county policy and the comprehensive plan. If the place where the desires of the community and your own personal individual agency has weight and is going to get more consideration is with our office. So reach out to me and share those thoughts with Supervisor Lusk, because as I think Megan also said as part of her answer, just because the staff makes a recommendation doesn't mean that Supervisor Lusk or the board writ large has to agree with it. They make their recommendations based off a different set of considerations. The community input and your all's personal desires and agency are much more heavily weighted on our side. So please direct that to us. It'll be more effective for you.
Thank you, Matt. Em, I see your hand, and I just want to note, we only have a couple minutes left in our scheduled time, and I want to respect everyone's time, so I would like to end on time. So Em, please ask your question.
Okay, so let's just say you all go through with this project. Due to this aging infrastructure that we have, how are you going to get these earth movers in and out of this community when there is no true way of these large vehicles to come in and out of this community without disrupting the flow of traffic? It's a true impedance.
It's a great question, Eb. As a part of any construction process, we are limited by, you know, the hours of operation that we can do. We can't do it on nights. On certain weekends, the hours are limited as well. You know, there's additional restrictions that way. We also make profit promises to have someone on capable of being contacted 24 hours a day. So if there's any questions during the construction process, that's a fairly typical proffer that both the Lee District or the Franconia District and has a project contact to be able to reach out to voice those concerns. To be frank, I don't think we're at the stage for precisely how this construction would occur, other than we'd likely start with where that entrance off Dilla Park was, since that's the primary entrance.
Okay, because I'm on Wesley, right? 7204 Wesley,
Mhm.
and that construction coming in that area, it's going to be wreaking havoc because I work from home majority of the time. So this is going to be a major concern for myself and probably others that are around.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. I recognize Scott.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. So I have one quick question and then a comment to end on here. But my question is piggybacking off of Alexi's about how the community's voice obviously unanimously opposed to not just the amendment, but I would argue the entire proposal on this call. What level of weight will that be given in the recommendation in your calculus? Because I don't want to simply have comments acknowledged and not given any weight. So I'm curious if you all actually follow some type of formula when making recommendations.
Sophia, do you want me to handle that?
Yeah, please.
Scott, that's a great question. I mean, there's no scientific formula, but I mean, we do, the intent of the community meetings is to learn about what the priorities are so that we can compare them against what county policies there are. And as I said, you know, how one of the major policy issues that we look at is how does the proposed plan change fit into the existing community? How can it be kind of knitted in seamlessly with as least impact as possible? So, you know, when we're talking to you all, we're learning about what is important to the community. What are those issues? You know, we certainly heard about traffic as a major issue, and also the environmental concerns and others. And so the intent is really to make sure that those concerns as best as possible can be covered in the staff report and our analysis. And then we'll prepare that. And then again, you know, as Matt has said, you know, your advocacy and your discussions and your concerns can be expressed at the additional public input opportunities with the Lee District Land Use Committee and also with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. Burl.
Yeah, I appreciate that response, Megan. I just want to state finally for the record, I live as a resident in the Franklin Commons, and I think, speaking as for many people on the call, we were frankly misled by the JR Real Estate Group. They came to the neighborhood, they fed everyone in the neighborhood, and they talked about luxury townhomes and all of the benefits that, you know, would thereby be provided. And it seems like they are really pivoting very hard from the initial subterfuge. And I feel very misled and just want everyone on the call to know that that's what they did.
Scott, I mean, I don't think we're pivoting from that at all. I think our goal is luxury townhomes. I don't think that's any different than what we've talked about.
Oh, thank you all. We have time for one last question. I recognize Burl. You're muted. I'm sorry, you're muted. Megan, can you unmute them?
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Just trying to understand how we got to where we are now and kind of being surprised, because as a longtime resident, you know, that was even designated on Fairfax County plat showings as parkland part of it. It was parkland and then the rest was R1 zoned. So that was the original. And now we have David's firm trying to change the comprehensive plan from the 4 to 5 to 5 to 8. So I understand that. How did we get from R1 to even the comprehensive plan now that's 4 to 5? And that's kind of a follow-up to my other question. Was that a county initiated thing by looking at the type of housing that we needed to fulfill your requirements, or was that private enterprise driven? You know, how do we get from the R1 to the current comprehensive plan of 4 to 5?
I would have to do additional research on that. What we have is an existing condition that is a mismatch between what the plan recommends and the existing zoning on the site, which happens sometimes with the plan, you know, might be changed at a large level. The 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre is something that exists elsewhere in the neighborhood. Adjacent properties to the west are planned for 4 to 5. The town house community to the south is also 4 to 5, although it was actually developed at a higher density than what the plan recommended, and it's a very old development. So I don't have an answer on that.
Being short on time, I guess let me phrase the question. Can that zoning change happen without any notification whatsoever in the comprehensive plan to the residents that surround what's happening?
So a developer can request a rezoning to up to R5, which is 5 units per acre, without changing the comprehensive plan. So my group would not be involved at all if they wanted to rezone to 5 units per acre. That would be Brian's group, and Brian would handle that through the rezoning process. The request that they have is to go to up to 8 units per acre, and that's why we're involved.
I'm trying to figure out how it got even to 4 to 5 without us even knowing about it. So what you're saying is that that can happen. You can go from R1 to 4 to 5 without the residents even knowing that it happened.
Well, there would be a notification process with the rezoning, and it would go to the Franconia District Land Use Committee, the Planning Commission, and the Board of Supervisors.
Would any
And I think if I may, just one point, the recommendation for 4 to 5 has been in the comprehensive plan for a very long time, decades. And there's the way that we have looked and read through. I mean, certainly we were not around when the original. We weren't working for the county, I should say, when that plan wasn't was written. But I will say that there is a relationship between the comprehensive plan and the construction of the parkway. So there may have been, and sometimes is the case within the comprehensive plan that and again, this would have been 30 years ago at least, that there would have been a relationship between the right-of-way dedication and the right-of-way dedication for the parkway and and a potential increase in density.
Okay, but I'm not trying to be difficult with my question, but it's a pretty simple question. Can R1 zoning go up to 4 to 5 without any notification or signs or public hearing?
No, it cannot.
So there would have had to been some notification 30 years ago, you're saying possibly that rezone.
Yeah, the zoning is different from the comprehensive plan recommendation. So the comprehensive plan recommends 4 to 5 units per acre.
Okay.
And
So
it is zoned R1.
Okay, so comprehensive plan can change without any notification is what you're saying.
No, the comprehensive plan has to go through a public notification process as well.
Okay.
What we're saying is that the recommendation for 4 to 5 units per acre has been in the plan since before any of us worked for the county, and we don't have direct knowledge of how that change came to be.
Okay, all right.
Megan, is that a fair summary?
That's fair, that's fair. I just wanted to understand whether that could happen without the residents knowing. You're saying it couldn't, it just happened before you were there.
No,
So anyway,
there's a
when that-
legal requirement for noticing in the state code that we are required to send out.
If that happened, we'd have a big problem. So that's,
Yeah, and as David had mentioned in the past, even with today's comprehensive plan that recommends the 4 to 5 dwelling units per acre density, if David's client or another property owner in the future wanted to even get to that density, there would be a rezoning, and then the notices sent out as well to the property owners and the adjacent property owners and the HOAs around the site, as well as the posting and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think we're a little bit over time, so I want to thank everyone for participating this evening. We will be posting, I'll drop the link in the chat again for the plan amendment website. When we reschedule public hearings for the plan amendment, it will be posted there. Information about the rezoning is there's a link to that on the website as well. So on the plan amendment page, so you can access that. My contact information is also on the website, so you can email me. I'd be happy to, if it's not a question for me, I'll figure out who to direct the question for, but we do want to hear from you. Contact Matt and Supervisor Lusk. That is another avenue for you to make your voices heard. And you know, and we do appreciate the community members who helped get the word out. We are going to go back and look at our notification processes. Clearly there was a flaw, and like I said, we do apologize for not doing a better job getting the word out. We will do better next time, and no decisions have been made at this point from the county side or the Board of Supervisors side. So you know, we will make sure that we improve our notification processes and make sure that everyone gets notified of any future meetings.
Sophia and Megan and Brian and Matt, thank you guys for taking the time. I do appreciate that 2 hours out of your day. You know, we as community members will definitely be in discussions with each other. We'll take every avenue to coalesce our voice to make sure that we feel we're being representative. Matt, you did a great job of breaking down when that might be most useful. I'm a very stubborn person, so I'll definitely do what I can to make sure that the community members are in the know. But we thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
And we thank you for your time.
Yep. And when you identify, like kind of when you guys coalesce, again, my email's in there, send me an email. We can have a call and talk about having Supervisor Lusk come out and talk to you when it's appropriate, or whatever you all feel like you need is the kind of additional platforms. So just feel free to reach out, please.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thank you all. Good evening.
Thank you.